All right, welcome back, everyone, for another episode of the Chameleon Pathos podcast. If you're wondering why I over-articulated the pathos, is because I just tried it one time before I just did it, and it was not too articulate. So I apologize if it's over-articulate this time. Nevertheless, we are still here on the beautiful Bali Island. Do you think they cut that? Did that top of that tree come down? Look at over. No, in their yard. There's a tree right there.
Yeah, I guess so, but
Do you think that came down in a storm or?
came down a storm though.
Well, I don't know. I feel like.
I think it's cut by some people because I heard some noise in the
Oh, you
morning.
did. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, regardless. Well, while our attention is on the background, it might begin absolutely storming at some point.
Yeah.
So we might have to cut it short.
Yeah.
So I think without further ado, maybe we get on to our topic of the day.
Right. So today's topic, as we discussed before, so we still will hop on about the language learning. So which
Sure.
we've done one episode before.
Yes, and we learned about your experience of learning
Yeah.
English while living in China.
Now I want to ask you about your story about learning Chinese.
Well, I don't speak too well, so I don't think
I
everyone
mean,
should listen to my
compared to those
Sure.
people living in China for years, I also would like to say I would say your level is definitely there. I would say it's very decent level.
Decent is the word you chose. Decent.
Great, I would say compared to those people. Yeah, I mean those people spend a lot of money, efforts,
Decent.
try to be. I mean, try to reply and humble. But I also it's pretty great. It's very great.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Now maybe share us your story, because
Well, it all begins in the summer of 2020. And if people remember, that was a pretty depressing time around the world. Less so for you guys. I think the depression was delayed a couple of years as far as you had successful shutdown measures early on, and then it kind of, got a little worse a couple of years later. But we went into super shutdown mode around that time. Well, March of 2020-ish is when I was evacuated from Nepal. I was living in Nepal. I was on a program in Nepal. I was evacuated home. And yeah, it was a scary time. Everyone didn't really know how serious it was. But regardless, finished out that semester online. And then that summer comes around, and I was supposed to have an internship at the Olympics in Tokyo with NVC. But obviously that I did not end up actually having that internship. One of the few jobs that I wish I had the opportunity to have worked. But nevertheless, basically that summer didn't have any school programs going on, no work, nothing like that. So I received an email from my professor at my university who said that if I was able to fulfill a language requirement, I could have a minor in Asian studies.
Cool.
Because basically I had spent time in Asia and there were enough courses they considered to fulfill the requirements. So I was like, okay, that adds a little more of something to my philosophy degree, which many people view to be somewhat useless. So I was like, okay, I'll add on a minor. And I also had a international business minor as well. So adding some sort of substance to my degree that I was going to earn the following summer or the following spring. And so, but the catch was I had to take 2 semesters of Chinese. I go, oh, cool. I still have 2 semesters of university left. That's fine. I'll do that.
Or have a quick question before you continue. Sorry, will that be okay? So before you started to learn Chinese, did you figure out you have any interest in it, or have you know something about that?
Well, I have not begun studying Chinese at this point in the story.
Okay, so before you actually you didn't have any kind of the genuine impression about how difficult or
Well, I
what kind
received
of...
an email from my professor who said if I took this language requirement, or if I took the language courses and I could receive the minor, I go, okay, that's great. But the catch is that I had to take 2 semesters at the intermediate level.
Okay.
Which means I had to self-study the first year's worth in 2 months. I had to teach myself the first 2 semesters of Chinese, which at my university was a course every day, 5 days a week. Most courses are only 3 days a week. So it was like 10 credits that I had to self-study in 2 months before the semester began.
That's pretty intense. I mean,
And so, I mean, in the 4 semesters leading up to this, I had become more aware than most Americans of the presence of China around the world and the presence of the Chinese in general, and thus the language, and realizing as the future comes to us, it'll be even more important. There's going to be more of you guys. There's your influence in the world will be greater. And so I should probably learn the language to be able to interact and understand you. You, as in the 1.4 billion of the nation / other non-Zhongguoren, Huaren in the world. Non-Chinese national Chinese as an ethnicity. And so I decided to start studying, and my mom still tells me she remembers me sitting at the kitchen table every night. She goes to bed, and I'm just sitting there just like drawing these lines on these flashcards, thinking that I'm going to learn this language that at the time seemed like Egyptian hieroglyphics, just like, how am I ever going to do this? How is this ever going to work? I'm going to waste all this time doing it and not be able to speak a language. Yeah, so after I got that email, I was just committed to it, and I ordered the textbooks and just started studying the first year's worth on my own.
wow,
That's how it started.
it's very hard to imagine that, especially because again, the language, the whole the system and the also like the mindset behind learning this kind of in English and Chinese are totally different. It's very hard to imagine how you're gonna start from scratch or by
Well, and I didn't have
yourself.
there was no teacher. So I
Yeah.
just decided to do it on my own. I just got the books and started working my way through them. I had received guidance from several sources, aka like individual people, but also the internet is wonderful as well. But yeah, I mean, it was I just spent the first 2 days just trying to understand if I was able to differentiate tones. Because some people just are actually tone deaf, like for just in their physiology, they just can't identify the tones. And so I encourage anyone who's thinking about learning Chinese to try to understand if you are one of those people or not. Should we help you secure your microphone over there? Yeah, what's going
It's
on?
pretty
I think,
dangerous.
hold on, I think we just got to tighten this up right here.
Okay.
Oh, nope, that's loosening it right there.
Yeah. Thank you.
That should be good.
Yeah.
Okay, are we all good over there?
Yeah.
Okay. There you go. I think you're good. Okay.
Thank you.
So a lot of people have to understand if they are tone deaf or not. Because if you are tone deaf, then you shouldn't put yourself through the hellish experience of trying to learn this language that you are quite literally unable to understand. So I just spent the first 2 days like on some sort of website. It was like press play, and it gave you a syllable, pa, ma, pa, with a different tone. And your responsibility was, what tone is this?
Wow.
And I got like 20% of them right. Like it was so hard to even just. So then once you kind of start to understand what that means, then you move on to the pinyin chart. And from there, it just kind of grows. Well, what's tough about Chinese is there's so many aspects that you have to learn. So the speaking is super difficult. The listening is super difficult. Then there's this characters component, which only exists in that language and maybe a handful of other ones. There's that sort of component to learning the language. Most of the languages are phonetic in the world. So, yeah, it was tough. It was a tough beginning.
I would say like even for me, because I still remember like the first stage. I actually, when you mentioned about your stage learning, try to figure out identify different tongue and trying to like figure out the character things. That's the stage when we're doing like I would say the kindergarten stage to the primary school stage. Actually, we have to do this kind of thing, especially the writing and turn things really drive us. Maybe it's particularly for people from the southern area. We do also have a difficulty about identifying term. So like also like for the words, I mean, you know my Chinese name. So at the first 6 years of my life, I couldn't write the second character of my name.
Yeah, that's a that's a rare occurrence. That's a particularly
Yeah, but also a lot of my friends who have like a very difficult
yeah.
character in their name at their first. I mean, before they go to the I would say our like the intermediate level of Chinese. They won't able to write it as well. Probably use pinyin to replace that. So yeah, it is. I was a Chinese. It is at the first. It is pretty hard for
Yeah.
literally everyone, even
Yeah.
for native speakers.
Yes.
You gotta take time.
You got to take the time.
Yeah.
So then I spent those 2 months, 12 hours a day, just studying, trying to learn the amount of characters I had to learn, which in retrospect is not that many characters, but you have to like learn how to learn the characters and learn how to learn the words and understand that there's a new structure of how the order, all that kind of stuff. But then I showed up to the first day of class and was able to introduce myself, and they all knew that that's what I was like. I was the only person that was trying to do this, and they were all like kind of shocked that I got to at least somewhat close to the level I was supposed to get to on my own. But the unfortunate thing is that I took, so I self-studied the first year of university's worth, and then I was in the semesters for second year, but I took it online because this is when I convinced my friends to do a road trip across the country. So I was the only one online. Everyone else was in class. So I like didn't really learn anything through the actual class. It was just continuous self-study.
Cool.
So yeah. And then after I graduated, it was just continuing to self-study, just textbooks, YouTube videos, talking to Chinese strangers on the internet, all of that.
That's the part I love most.
I mean, yeah. Well, and then here, maybe I'll just share the rest of the process and then go perhaps provide advice to people in the areas in which I wish I did it differently. I was just kind of going by like brute force, just exposure, listening, even though I didn't really understand anything, trying to read, even though I didn't really understand anything, but like having conversations and kind of just like clenching onto the things that I didn't know how to say and repeatedly doing it. And as all foreigners who learn this language know, there are a handful of questions you're going to get with your first interaction with someone. 你是哪国家人啊？今年多大了？什么工作啊？ how old are you? Where are you from? What was the last one I just said? I completely forgot what I just said. What's your work?
Yeah. What do you do for your job?
Yeah.
For living?
And so you can like very confidently get your way through these interactions with people, but then it gets to a point where you just. So I hit a wall with learning characters. When I started, I didn't have like a systematic way to learn characters. I just kind of had like an approximation in my head of how it looked. But you get to a point where a lot of the same parts of the character are used, but one small tweak makes it a completely different character. And so if you're just kind of like looking and trying to memorize it, and that's all you're doing, then you're going to miss all those differences. So that was one of my first things, and I had to buy a course that kind of like I started from zero on characters and went zero after 2 years into studying, a year and a half into studying. I went from zero back to zero on characters and just went through that like systematic learning process of the characters. That's one of the big mistakes I made. And then at that point, it was the immersion process. Actually, no, that was 2.5 years in. I restarted from zero on characters. And then, let's see, I started that summer. That would have been a little over 2-year mark is when I started to live in Chinese speaking places. So the Chinese community in northern Thailand, because Taiwan Island and mainland China were still not open. So I was in a village in Thailand where they speak Chinese. I went to go live there because that was the only place I could find. So I spent a month speaking with them. Then Taiwan Island opened. So I went to Taiwan for 3 months. Went to a city called Tainan, which is not Taipei. So what that means is it's not as international, not as much English, more Chinese spoken. I can't rely on English. So that's why I went there specifically. And then some time in Malaysia. And then once I had reached a level in which I felt, because the issue is if I went straight to Taipei, most people's English would be better than my Chinese. So then we would speak Chinese just because it makes, or speak English because it makes more sense to speak English to communicate effectively. However, after those 3 months in Tainan, it got to the point where when I went back up to Taipei, my Chinese was better than most people's English in Taipei. So then we were still able to speak Chinese because it was better than us communicating in English, efficiency, effectiveness wise. So that was how I ordered it. Is you start in the places with the least English, because there's a higher chance that you're going to run into that your Chinese language will be better than other people's English. And then you can move to the more international cities where the English standard will be higher, but then at that point, your Chinese standard is also higher. So you could still probably speak Chinese and get away with it. And be, as in you speak Chinese better than most people speak English. So that's why I chose the Thai village and then Tainan, Taiwan.
That I always say that makes sense. It's that I feel like I don't know if it's true. Like what I learned from what you just said, it's more about like it's a phrase to try to like go into when you select the IOCD language in environment, you try to deliberately select the place where those people like deal. So you prefer it is like should be should be a higher proportion of people who could use your target learning language rather than your native's language,
Right.
which in that case it won't reach to the point that because a lot of time when a lot of foreigners say to go to like they say if I want to learn Chinese I would go to maybe to whatever city will be
But most people go to Beijing.
Yeah, but the thing is,
Well,
as you
for
said
reference,
before,
hold on. For reference to the audience, Beijing is like the standard Chinese.
Mm-hmm.
Standard Chinese. Everyone can have their own opinion. But that's why when I tell people I'm here just kind of learning and practicing Chinese, they're kind of surprised because not many people go to Shanghai to do that. Most people will go to Beijing because that's where you get the standard accent.
Yeah.
So most people will go to Beijing. But then the issue is Beijing is one of the two most highest English level cities. And so there's still an opportunity for people to like rely on their English because other people will understand. So again, that's why I don't even think that's the best move. I think the best move is just go to like a tiny city in that, I guess, close to Beijing, because you're still going to get that similar accent.
Yeah.
Maybe not the perfect Beijing accent,
Yes.
because they speak perfect standard Mandarin in Beijing.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Mm-hmm.
But if you go like a city that's an hour or two away,
Mm-hmm.
a second tier, a third tier city, if you're really starting to get adventurous in that aspect, I would recommend that. Yeah. Just because, again, there's less reliance on English. Like, you can say things and people won't understand them. So
yeah, but again, also I guess so. To this point, it's also the similar thing where it's so at this stage actually it would be better because again if people they just started learning this language, they don't have any accumulation about anything like whatever the turn and character and the grammar and basics and about the language. It would be a little bit hard to put them directly into this kind of like, I would say it's like a very very immersive language environment. Whereas he or she have to use this target language to learn a higher level of this target language.
Sure.
So it would be very efficient way for people who already like master a certain level of this language, like you.
Lila.
Oh, yeah, the storm is coming.
That's okay. We're going to keep going with it.
Yeah. It's also very vibing.
It's so vibey.
Yeah.
So that's one of the big things I would recommend is like going somewhere where you have to be super immersed. Right? Like you can't rely on your English to get you out of situations. You have to be using the language all the time. I know that a lot of university programs who are really big on this, will do, say, homestays are huge because you like have to. Well, when I was in Nepal, like that was one of the only reasons I learned the language that I was studying there is because they didn't speak English, and if I wanted to communicate with the people I was living with, I had to speak their language. Yeah. So that was my idea with living in Tainan and working my way up, staying away from somewhere like Taipei, staying away from somewhere like Shanghai, because when you're in the earlier stages, the odds that your Chinese is better than someone's English is low.
That's a fair point because, yeah, again, I feel like it's also like just you so it will just lower the chance you will feel like there's people who actually, as you said before, like their English level might be better than your Chinese level. So which case it will be your maybe it's not the right word to use. It's more not about the catering stuff.
Well, in Chinese, people love opportunities to practice their,
Yes.
which
So
is that's really another one of the tough parts. Is even I guess again I think that there in general a lot of foreigners might be a little overconfident with their Chinese abilities, and Chinese tend to be super humble in general.
yeah,
But I think one aspect in Chinese tend to be very confident, perhaps overconfident,
yeah,
is sometimes in their English abilities.
um,
And so if I start speaking Chinese with someone,
yeah,
and I know, again, and especially at this point when it happens, like it's gonna be rare that someone's English is gonna be. It happens all the time, but when they respond to me in English and like are struggling to do so, it really frustrates me
yeah,
because they're like I understand and like maybe I want to be able to help them practice their English, but it's also like we're communicating way less effectively. Like just speak Chinese and we can get it done. So again, that happens sometimes where sometimes people genuinely will have a better language level than you in your language, and that's a more effective way to communicate. But also sometimes they're just wanting to practice. And so yeah, that happens. Well, let me move on to the next stage of my Chinese language learning journey, if you will, is that when I arrived after Taipei, I arrived in I was here and then Shanghai.
I know.
I mean, as far as Chinese speaking, well, specifically China, I would say Shanghai is the highest English level. So now I'm at the point where there's going to be a lot of times where people's English is very good and perhaps even better. And so the one place you can go, or the collection of places you can go, where you can count on there being an occasional great English speaker, but most not speaking any English, are the parks of Shanghai. And so the last year or so of my Chinese learning, and if you are someone who speaks Chinese and has heard me speak Chinese, you might be able to hear that it has strongly affected the way I speak the language. Is that I have been studying. I jokingly will say that I go to XYZ Park University in Shanghai because people always ask, where do you study? And I don't go to any university, but I jokingly say that the name of the park university is my university because I just learned from the old people. I just study Chinese with the elderly Shanghainese. And so, fortunately, a lot of the elderly Shanghainese don't speak Mandarin super well. And I think it's affected my speaking a little bit. However, it's okay.
Yeah.
And it's gotten to the point where a lot of the elderly Shanghainese will now refuse to speak Mandarin with me because they've learned that I'll understand like 70 to 80% of what they say in Shanghainese, and they would just rather speak Shanghainese than Mandarin with me. Um, so another lesson in that is lesson one. Elderly Chinese people who have loads of free time, especially in Shanghai and Beijing, are great speaking partners.
Cool.
However, lesson two is specifically as it pertains to Shanghai is some of them don't really speak the language you want to learn very well.
Yeah.
But no, like on a more serious note, hanging in the parks is great because, like, as we've spoken about before, the Chinese, especially that generation, really like social interaction, like for the sake of social interaction, not necessarily the content of the conversation, but they understand that interacting with people increases well-being in general, and they're genuinely curious people. Especially the Shanghainese are very curious about foreigners, so they just make for great people to speak with, and it allows you to continue to speak because that's what there's never shortcuts. Like it's about just continuously speaking and speaking and speaking,
Yeah.
and so you just need people to be there to listen, and they are always willing to do that, which I've been very grateful for.
Cool. Yeah, it reminds me there's same advice. Before, remember, I was about to like go to Australia. I really want to like figure out how to like just level up my English. So I don't know where like do I need to like the first thing I saw maybe just order some like online. The foreigner like the 1 versus 1. The speaking like the class maybe you have to pay for the money for that. So my friend, no. When the moment there's a great place and there are some people. It is totally free as long as you got time and you are patient. I said, oh, great. So there's a place also like the English corner in Shanghai, like in Australia. I said, no,
Oh, so English Corner. Give me a little bit.
yeah,
English Corner is, so what I was saying is most of the time the elderly Shanghainese do not speak English that well, but there are a handful that do because there's a group of people who are part of the English Corner who basically get together on set times throughout the week to practice English, and sometimes there will be collaborations with groups of foreigners for a language exchange where they will sit down next to you and just endlessly practice their English.
that was pretty intense. I mean,
So I think what you're referencing to is your friend had recommended you the Australia equivalent to the English Corner.
that was my assumption because when she described
A similar, yes.
yeah, I assume there is some of the places in some of the public area, like whatever the community center or park or something. She said no, and as you guys have those retired the uncle and aunties like in that generation, they are loads of time and they just love to talk. You can channel like especially on the weekends when a lot they will go to the churches or go to the some doing some of the volunteer things. They will love to talk with you and they also did a lot of time. And maybe sometime at the cost and you just help them walk their dog, take care of their cats, or just accompany with them to have a tea or something. And they said, if you don't mind to have the Australian accent, it would be great. I would say, oh, it is exactly the same that you were doing that.
Very similar.
So I feel like it is also like you said, maybe the form will be vary from country to country. But yeah, I guess maybe like that's just my assumption. Probably like, I mean, it's more about this what kind of people which they are generally are friendly and are patient and love to and also love to chat with people who really want to like, especially young people want to learn their language. I would say probably are those. I would say these old people that have plenty of time to do that.
Well, then the thing that you're going to learn about Chinese, me speaking to the aspiring learner of the language, is, and again, until I even got to Shanghai, I didn't really notice it. But like because Shanghai, that was my first time going to mainland, and so when you hear people talking about dialects,
Mm-hmm.
I had thought this is someone who spoke Mandarin pretty well. I had thought that meant like strong accents.
Okay.
Shanghainese is a completely different language.
Yeah.
And it's less about the dialects, but what I'm saying is different regions of China, and then when you're on Taiwan Island, when you're in Malaysia and different regions of Malaysia, they speak Mandarin completely differently. And so there are going to be, this is more so like China versus Malaysia, but like there are words that are completely different.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of examples, but that's not really important here. That you need to, when you're at least starting out, focus on one region. Try to consume all the content from one region. And so that's why a lot of people, because a lot of the materials are teaching standard Mandarin, and so a lot of the materials are Beijing. So you're going to hear a lot of the R at the end of the, right? And so, like I've spoken before, there have been places where I go and I said EBR or Howar, and they don't understand because I was in Taiwan or I was in Shanghai. So yeah, and then you're gonna get to a point where you are feeling more confident, and you're gonna maybe be living in a place, but maybe you travel to others, and then you need to develop more of this almost like chameleon-esque way of speaking the language, where when you're in the north, you do this. Obviously, you have much more of a feel for the language. But when we travel to the north, you add an R at the end, because that is one of the characteristics of the north. Is a lot of the words will end in an R rather than an N generally, and so you're very good at doing that. And then when I'm in Malaysia, like I have to adapt the accent I use or some of the terms that I use. So it is an endless game learning this language, because you're going to learn its It's almost like 100 different languages.
Yes, I mean even for me, like before I go to the college, I was always in the environment which people either just Mandarin, Shanghainese, and English. So that's the basic things. Even the very standard Mandarin, we're only it's something you can only hear from the radio and the news. You know, it's the standard one,
Yes.
and I was like actually the younger generation like me, I mean, even if we're from southern area, we are, as I would say, we are using the standard one, especially it's required, and we will have this test in the college, so we will have to like, so you can, if you want to work, especially in school, as some like the, I would say like some related with government or something.
News reporting.
Oh yeah, they require even higher level.
Right.
But yeah, generally you before you graduate, everyone are required to get certificate, which to most of the people, even include like the Shanghainese students, are not the issue. But to some people, but again, it's college is the only time when I encounter like all these friends from different region of this country, and I realized oh, it's just so different. Our accents, even though speaking I knew they're speaking we're all speaking Mandarin, but it's so different,
Yeah.
especially those I would say my friends from the even more southern area like Fujian or Guangzhou. So they have the issue, and they are very they were very nervous about the test. I remember the time. So I would like I not everyone like aren't yours also like speaking the Mandarin.
Yeah.
Why are you worried that they say no? It's just standard one. So standard is like as you said, it would be the tone, so it was more specific and
Right.
meticulous about the celebrating the subtle things. It is very hard to make sure you are pronouncing it pretty standard. So yeah, again, like you said, like also like during that experience while you were because I'm not only in Canada with with people from even southern area, but also from even northern area, and also you realize so like with different type of the dialect they speak, also it reflect different kind of the I would say this culture like cultures and tradition, and also even the I would say the general the character they carry. So it's actually very fun. So like
It's demeanor, like way of interact, like temper sometimes.
yeah, temper. It is the first time like when we're because a lot of time we ourselves are people from southern area, so it feels like it's very natural. Still the same thing when we talk to the southern people, but when we talk to even people from even southern area, they say they always compliment us like, "Oh, your Mandarin is very good." I was like, "What are you talking about? I'm not from Beijing." They say, "Yeah, we know they're friends, but I'm very surprised you can speak that kind of level of the Mandarin." I was said, "But how about your people?" And he showed me some recording from the other friend. I mean, himself is already speak very similar to the standard one, but he said not everyone like him back to his hometown. It is very so it's just so different. It's nothing like the standard one. And also like I will also figure out like, if you're again the Mandarin, it is the common language we're using, but if you really want to attend or like enrich the deeper conversations with northern people, I mean they were prefer your if you really want to be like break the ice, be try to be intimate with them. I mean, mentally, you try to like I would say try to adapt to the way they speak. They use their
Yeah,
language.
100%. So yeah,
Very
I would
important.
encourage you, yeah, wherever you're living, you try to adapt that mode. But also if you're going to want to be going to different regions. So I think one of the mistakes I made early on was I was just choosing resources with all types of dialects and from all different, I didn't really care. Like whether it was street interviews in Taiwan, Shanghai, Malaysia, I was just like, eventually I want to be able to understand it all. I think that extended my learning process. I think you can get to a higher proficiency if you just perhaps just like listen to standard Beijing listening material. But I think now the advantage I have over someone who does that is like, for example, when I flew into Chongqing, you were already at the hotel. I had flown into Chongqing. You called my Uber, Didi, taxi, and you were nervous that I wasn't going to be able to understand the dude
Because
because he
I
had
didn't understand.
because you didn't understand.
Yeah, yeah.
When I got in the car, I I had no issue understanding him, and that's because I think I have consumed so much material from different places that I am able to identify just the characters, right, in the structure of the sentence more so than like it sounding funny. I can just kind of fill in the spaces more. Where if you've only been studying Beijing Mandarin or Standard Mandarin, for example, you might like not have your footing as well
Yeah.
to be able to pick up some of these exaggerated, like really different ways of saying things. So that's why I think I've had a longer process to get to a certain proficiency level. But I think on brand with everything that we do, perhaps my language is more adaptable to where I am. So when we're in Shanghai, I speak a certain type of Mandarin. When I first arrived in Shanghai, everyone was like, "You learned your Chinese in Taiwan, didn't you?"
Yeah, you were.
Everyone could tell immediately I had learned in Taiwan.
Yeah, because the accent will tell.
And then I think I slowly adapt to where now when I go out of Shanghai, everyone knows I live in Shanghai.
Yeah, because you were. Yeah, you different understand
So
the
what I'm
essence
saying is
somehow.
where you learn will shape it. And then also it's just a matter of next week when I'm in Malaysia or when I'm in Singapore. I know some changes I can make to speak a little more similar to the way they do, and I'll be a little less of an outsider. When I'm back in Shanghai, obviously I speak a certain way. When we eventually make the pilgrimage to Beijing, which I can't believe I haven't been to Beijing yet. I was thinking about that the other day. I will change the way I speak a certain way.
Yeah,
So
cool.
yeah, I don't know. It's a pretty crazy language to have learned. If I had to go back,
Yeah.
would I decide to study again? I don't know. It's been so much longer. I guess like yes, it's unlocked obviously a lot of experiences that I wouldn't have had otherwise. But it was so much longer. I'm still in I don't speak that well. I speak well enough. I speak well enough for people on the internet to think I speak well. But when we really get down to it, a lot of the times So it's funny. A lot of the time when we speak to each other, which is the opposite, we do the opposite of what we should be doing.
Yeah,
Is so I would say so. Your English is better than my Chinese for sure.
it would a lot of time spent in there.
But what I'm saying is, a lot of the time when we communicate, you speak Chinese and I speak English, because when learning a language, it's easier to understand it than just to speak it.
Yeah,
And so when you speak Chinese, I don't. There's no. I understand everything. When I speak English, you generally understand everything.
yeah,
However, we trip up more when we speak the other language. So it's funny if you ever hear us talking, 90% of the time you'll speak Chinese and I'll speak English, like in the same, like the sentences going back and forth.
yeah.
Like we don't both speak English and then both speak Chinese. It's literally back and forth. You'll speak Chinese, I'll speak.
Yeah, yeah. I feel also like somehow
It's lazy. We're being lazy.
yeah, yeah, and also some of the yeah, it's more save the time. And a lot of time, if I mean, also in Shanghai, I've also mentioned before showed some video about the 散装
Yeah.
it's like it's not the
But that's different.
yeah, but still
What she's referring to this term, which means that a lot of Shanghainese will they'll speak Chinese in this kind of way. I will say it and then I will explain it the sentence what it means. It's like 你准备好这个 presentation 吗? It's like you're speaking Chinese, and then for one word that there's a Chinese word for it, but it's not as precise as presentation. Like they'll insert English words into a sentence. So that was, did you prepare that presentation well? Where did you prepare is very clear, but like presentation might be a more specific word than there's a word for presentation in Chinese, but it might not refer to like PowerPoint. Whereas presentation, when you use in English, it has that more specific meaning. So a lot of people will use it for accuracy's sake, and they'll also use it because it's kind of pompous and like kind of like a higher level. Yeah, like fancy.
yeah, yeah. And also, it's being lazy because if you use Chinese to like explain those things, it's also like you have to
Sure.
yeah, yeah. But yeah, and a lot of time, yeah, we are being lazy. There's a lot of them where I just try to half use the Shanghainese and mix with English because again, when there is so I feel like it's okay when you are learning your target language, even for me being, I mean, so like immerse myself into like a full English environment, it's okay. But if there a lot of time for I would become tired to the point I feel like I just feel like I'm gonna throw up because I've been like
That's not good.
away from my my native land for a long time. I feel like it is not comfortable. So I feel it's okay. It's like you, even if me like as an advocate, like I always like to push, not only just advise other or encourage other of my friends to do that, but also try to just force myself to into this environment. But I also feel like it is also like we discussed before. Sometimes, say you are being intensely immersed into this kind of full of Mandarin Shanghai environment for like months, but sometimes you just take a switch to the other place, and maybe you don't use Chinese that often, but when you're back, we both feel like, both of us feel like you were.
So remember when you first got here,
Yeah.
and you were like, "Why is your Chinese better than when you left Shanghai?"
Yeah.
As I think, yeah. So that's another thing. I think when you have some rest time,
Yeah.
your brain will just naturally. I don't know. Like, I guess you're just not as tired anymore. You get some space. Another thing I'll share is one way that once you get to a conversational point in a language learning journey. So I noticed this both with Spanish and with Chinese.
Yeah.
Is that if like I don't actually set a timer, but I generally understand the time I started talking to someone, the longer I can go in a conversation only in the language before I have a headache is a sign of progress. Cool. And so like you'll get a headache just because your brain is getting more tired than if you were to be speaking your native language.
Yeah.
So how long I can go speaking the language before getting a headache was a metric that I always use when learning a new language. So I haven't heard that one. So I want to pass that along to people if they are listening and want to use that. I don't know. I will use that as a sign of progress sometimes. But yeah, I don't know. I'm trying to think what else I would like to. I mean, there's so much there's so many mistakes I made. Space repetition. Use space repetition, flashcards, Anki. That would be a big hack that I wish I started earlier on. It's just time. Everyone is always asks like, how do I learn quicker? It's like, you just learn. You don't learn quicker. There's no shortcut. I mean, there are better practices and techniques, but there's no shortcuts. Like even if you use the best techniques and practices, it's still years.
Yes. I still remember like when, for now, like my understanding about like the lesson level for me right now, like it's definitely better than what I was learning in high school. That's the first time when I tried to like level up my listening part. So my friend recommended me I remember every day. So that's a starting point when I try to just put myself, like give my lot of the input content about the English. So we were listening to I would say it's not the standard VOA, because right now the standard VOA to me, it is okay. I mean, I couldn't understand 100% of that, but it's not as difficult as that kind of stuff. So like my teacher suggested to listen to the VOA like learning English. So it's like slower speed, especially for English learner. Even that to me is like but and she said just try to use those English. Just try to bomb yourself like for 3 months. You don't need to like understand them. You just play it every day, especially whenever you are like have time. Just bomb it, blast you like.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, I will try it.
It's just exposure.
Yeah.
But also, I will say, I think advice on passive learning, yes, or passive listening, sure, but it's not going to get you all the way there. I think people will like preach this idea of passive learning, like always have it on in your headphones, but
it's the first day. It might be helpful.
But the thing is, I think when people say passive learning to me, or the way I see it, in the way that it's effective is it's always playing in your ear, so that if you're doing something and then if you just kind of step away to grab water, your focus is then going to what's going into your ear. It's not like, I think a lot of people it's like it's going into your subconscious and you're just like learning in the back. I don't think that's true. I think you can only focus on one thing. So don't rely on just, if you always have the language playing on around you, but you're never actually focused on it, I don't think you're going to really learn the language. Perhaps I'm wrong. If you've done this, please share. But I would say, yes, it's important, but you need to really focus, especially in the early days. You need to sit there almost like you're meditating. Like if you should just sit there with your legs crossed, eyes closed, and really focus on the language.
When I mention about these things, it's not the only method I learned that. Because aside that, we still have English course, writing and listening and the grammar thing, it's very intense. So like this thing is more about like help you to like being more familiar with your target language.
Sure.
I feel like also like I actually want to bring this up, but I'm not sure it is universe. It is applicable to everyone. So it is like the TV series. I mean, yeah, you've heard this way a lot of time probably on internet before. For me, like it is very helpful. But I would say like a lot of my the expression when I know right now, like it's all from those TV series.
I think it's choosing what you enjoy. So like I don't really watch TV series because this is, you're gonna laugh when I say this because you just know me so well, is that it's not like quick enough, like it's not dense enough. There's a lot of points in TV shows where people aren't speaking, and I just feel like I'm wasting time because I'm sitting there wanting to watch this because I want to learn the language. Whereas if you listen to something like a radio show or a podcast, or you're reading a book, like there aren't any breaks. Whereas sometimes I feel like there's too many breaks in a TV show where they're not speaking the language and it frustrates me. Again, it's whatever you like. Like that's what you got to just, it's the same with everything.
Yeah, for people too, you like role playing, you really want to understand because again,
like cosplay.
I don't know. It's like.
Are you recommending cosplay?
No. I would not. No. It's not cosplay. No. Definitely not cosplay. It's like when you were. I just want to bring up some of the benefit of if you use the TV series or a movie. But I would more recommend TV series as your learning material if you really want to like. It's very. I would say it's very helpful for you to imitating the way how they speak. But also it's very. You have to be very selective to choose certain type of TV series. Again, like there is a mistake I made at the early stage. Because I'm more I know this way might help because I'm pretty interested in watching out all the American TV series. But it turns out I shouldn't choose the crime and detective series because they have lots of the words. I mean,
like
normal people would.
Yeah.
Normally you won't use that, so like, which means you have less chance to use that. So like, it will make me very
high
frustrated.
frequency words are important. High frequency words.
That's why I switched to the other something like related to your. Also, it's more about related to your own life. So that if you are a student who have a major in that kind of the crime and nothing, it'll be great. You can choose that type of TV series if you like. If you but yeah, most of the time, I would say, as you say, like those TV series which their accent, I mean, ideally at the first stage, it'll be better if they can speak the standard accent. It's more like the commonly used one for you to like identify them, to help you to imitate. And there are a lot of the ways. So some ways like a lot of my friend recommend because they major in English would be called that the shadowing way. So like it's anyone are interested can Google it online. There are like very specific tips and way to do that. But I would say that would be a very I would say it's not intermediate or beginner level way to do that. It is when you, again, at first, whether it's Chinese English, from my opinion would be at first I agree with what Max said. Like you have to give yourself whatever method you're taking. You definitely need a time, so enough time, and also like very higher focus, like very amount of the focus on this time. It like a meditation. You need to all in, just put yourself, just immerse yourself into this kind of learning process. That's kind of the phase. I think no one can escape from that.
Yeah.
So that is the.
You also can't escape the dark of the night sky. So, you know what? I don't know, but we might get some good. No, the color normally comes over here. I was thinking if we waited a little longer, I don't know, the way that the camera's exposed.
Yeah, it's a real nice sunset.
We're going to go watch the sunset, but we're going to hang it up.
Yeah.
We're going to close this off first. But I think, again, because this episode was about learning Mandarin, I would say learn the characters from the beginning foundationally.
Yeah.
Pronunciation early on.
Yeah.
Because I'm still recovering from not doing that. And then just brute exposure.
Yeah.
Those would be my big tips. Jayo. Add oil. For those who are not looking to learn a language, add oil is what that means, which means like, come on.
Also, I guess our time is limited. Maybe next time we can share more with us.
Perhaps.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
So it's time to say goodbye right now.
But there's one more thing we want to do before we say.
Oh yeah.
We want to just point your attention to the Chameleon Club, free online community,
Yep.
posted on school.com, link in the description. People living in different corners of the world, trying to integrate into those
Yeah.
societies and sharing their experiences along the way, some of the wins, some of the losses. We will be in there as well to help advise any way we can and also share our own stories because we still go through some weird experiences.
Excited to see you there.
Excited to see you there, but
Oh.
also equally excited to go see this sunset.
Yeah. Couldn't wait. So until next time.
Bye-bye.
Bye bye.